Welcome, franchise enthusiasts, to another exciting episode of the Franchise Happy Hour. I'm your host, Dylan DeGroat, and today we got not just one, but two incredible guests from Beacon Franchise Brokers. We got Brenan Compretta and Shawn Keener. As members of the Franchise Brokers Association, the team at Beacon Franchise Brokers are in the business of turning dreams into a reality. If you've ever dreamed of owning your own business, but just aren't sure where to start, you're in luck because Beacon Franchise Brokers specialize in assessing your values, your strengths, and weaknesses to match you with the perfect franchise opportunity. They'll help you navigate the vast sea of options and find the one that aligns with your interest and needs. With thousands of franchise opportunities, it's easy to get overwhelmed, but fear not, because Brenan and Shawn have the tools, training, and expertise that separate themselves as the top of the food chain. We'll guide you through those exponentially difficult franchise systems and ensure that your investment leads to that success. So grab that favorite beverage, sit back, and join us for a franchise-filled hour with a dynamic team from Beacon Franchise Brokers, and get ready to take that step on your next entrepreneurial dream. Gentlemen, welcome to the Franchise Happy Hour.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it, Dylan. Good to be here. Excited about it.
Thank you, Dylan. It is an honor to be on your podcast. You guys are doing some amazing things over there, Joshua Tree, and I've seen your podcast in the past, seen past episodes. Good stuff. So again, thank you so much for having us, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Hey, I can't thank y'all enough taking the time out of your day. I mean, I'm sure you guys are both super busy, so we do appreciate the love. And you can see I'm wearing a little JT over here on the side. I got that bright yellow, man. You ain't gonna miss me today. But hey, well, I appreciate it. Let's jump right in to the Franchise Happy Hour. All right, guys. So I always like to start out this way. I know we kind of talked a little bit before. It doesn't sound like you got anything to drink over there, but I might have seen something. What you got over there today?
Man, we got a little Celsius. We might put a little something in it, but right now we're talking.
Hey, man, you got to stay hydrated. You got to stay energized. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. It's 5 o'clock where I'm at. So, we're always out here trying to have a good time. But no, I'm excited to get into this with you guys. Loved meeting you down at the FBA conference last time we were down in Florida. Saw you guys. That was such a cool time. So I appreciate all that love and everything. But I want to jump right into this, talk to the listeners and tell them about both of your experience. So, each one of you at a time, kind of tell you a little bit of background. What'd you do before this? How'd you get into franchising?
I'm going to go first, because when you hear Shawn, it's going to sound very similar to mine. So I don't want you to think I copied him when he actually copied me, right? So yeah, man. So out of college, I was actually a high school football coach and teacher for a number of years, right? Really enjoyed that, and I think that sort of set the groundwork for where I am today. Once my wife and I were pregnant with our fourth child, I realized that we needed to do some things to be able to support the family better than on a teacher salary. So that's when I first ventured out into business ownership, became an Allstate insurance agency owner, actually still own that business. I've owned it for 14 years now. And the way I got into franchise brokering, so probably 5 or 6 years ago, I realized that I didn't feel real good about having all of my eggs in one basket, right? So I said, you know what? I need to find something else. I started Googling business opportunities, franchise opportunities, and before I knew it, I became a lead for a franchise broker consultant. And so I went through the process, just like we take people through today. I was in their shoes, right? So I looked at a lot of different franchises, got very close to signing with a couple of them. But at the end of the day, I realized that I really enjoyed that process, what that person was doing with me. And I could see myself doing that in that role. And so, I said, you know what? I think that's that's where I'd like to be. And so I started doing my due diligence, looked at all the various networks, found the one that was the best fit for me. And, here I am several years later and loving it. Great decision.
Yeah, that's awesome, Brenan. Thanks for sharing that, by the way. I appreciate that, man. Good insight. So, Shawn, take it away. How about you?
Well, Brendan ruined the front fun, right? So yeah, I copied Brendan, right? So a little backstory. We grew up together. We went to high school together. We played soccer together, football together, baseball together. I also went into teaching, education, coaching, athletic administration. Similar story. I got to a point in my career, my kids were growing up. I was always at somebody else's ball game. Money was tight on an educator's salary. So I felt like, it was time for me to start looking for alternatives too. And I had a friend approach me about insurance of all things. So I jumped off into insurance, spent a few years with a company, and then Brennan was with Allstate. I bought an Allstate agency. A couple years ago, Brennan and I talked a little bit about franchise, and I saw what he was doing. He really enjoyed it. I said, man, I'm very similar backgrounds. I love to help people, love to, help people succeed and help people thrive and those kinds of things. It's just something fun for me to do, right? So I jumped off with him. I joined the FBA. We were kind of doing our own thing, and then I joined Brendan with Beacon, and I'm kind of right now just the back end thing. We're doing a lot of things on the backside with lead generation and platforms and automation and different things. So I'm kind of handling some of that. So that's my story. Yeah, I followed Brendan. I copied Brendan. I guess he owns the copyrights to that story, but whatever. It works. Our partnership's good. We're doing several other things together. And we're trying to blend them all together to help our team and also eventually be able to help other franchise brokers too.
Excellent. Now, so how long have y'all actually been working together in the consulting side? Well, how many years has that been now?
Been about a year now, right?
Yep, year and a half.
Yeah.
Nice. And how long has how long ago was it that you started Beacon?
It's about close to 5 years ago. Yeah.
5 years.
So considering the lifespan of most brokers and consultants, I'm a veteran right now,
That's a fact right there. That's a fact for sure. What was I want to know a little bit more about the vision behind Beacon, right? Because you guys have set out to kind of to separate yourself a little bit from like what the person's doing in every standard, franchise consultant. Hey, just calling 100 leads a day, hoping to get in contact. What's Beacon doing that's a little bit different that you guys have found some value in? Well,
and I'll let Shawn sort of talk about this, but what we're doing it's actually a new business we're going to launch next month. We started working on this platform in the insurance industry, and it worked really well. And we customized it for franchise brokering, and it's changed my world from a franchise broker perspective. I mean, I went from closing 5 deals, I guess a year ago, to 15 the next year through some of the things that we're starting to do. Shawn, if you want to touch on that.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, Dylan, because we're excited about it, not just for us, but we're eventually want to help other brokers do the same thing, right? So we develop, our process, our platform that we're using from an automation standpoint to it's pretty complex. It can, pretty much run your whole business. But so what we're doing, from a lead generation standpoint to long nurtures to follow up with, with leads, a ton of different things that we're able to do that we plugged in, like Brendan mentioned, plugged into an insurance agency. And we took that business in 1 year from writing $400,000 in premium. The next year they wrote 1.6 million in 1 year, new business premium. So we said, wait a minute, this is a very good tool. Let's try it in the franchise brokering world. So we plugged it into Beacon. Brendan took off with it, and it's just we've seen the results. So now what we want to do is be able to help other brokers do the same thing. Because, right, I mean, we're in the business of helping people. We don't want to just help our team. we want to help other brokers as well, because as far as I'm concerned, we're all in this together, especially with the FBA, right? They've done so much to help brokers, help people like us. We want to be able to give back and, provide tools that we know work and can drive results to somebody's bottom line.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool concept too, because hey, the listeners out there, that we got a whole mixed bag, man. It's early entrepreneurs looking to get into franchising. Also have a ton of consultants who listen to this and just, always trying to get that insight of like, hey, what's this person doing? And that's what I do love about the franchise industry, man. As much as, as a franchisor, yeah, sure, are we competitors? But am I going to share with you some of those like insights to help you help get people across that finish line and help them, overcome those fears or, lead nurturing? Absolutely. I'm going to do that, because at the end of the day, the more we grow franchising in and of itself and create a good, a good name for it, right? Because I think there's a lot of like negative connotations towards what it is franchising and everything. And we'll definitely talk about those, during this. But I think it's cool that you guys are getting into the business of helping other brokers out too, and willing to do that, because at the end of the day, they are your competition, right? So, but they could be your competition, but as well as your closest allies in, helping overcome that. So I think that's really cool. So let me ask you this: Beacon Franchise Brokers, where'd you get the inspiration for the word beacon? Like, does it have any back end meaning? Is there anything to it, or is it just like, no, that was a cool name, so I went with it?
I mean, look, you got to find the domain that's available, right? It worked. But no, I mean, if you think about it, a beacon is basically a guiding light, and that's what we do. We help to guide people through the that process of finding the right business opportunity, a franchise opportunity for them. So, I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, Shawn and I, that's what we do. You can tell based on our background, we love helping people, coaching people. Man, I mean, I can go back, and that's where I get my passion from. Is we talked about how we were sports coaches. I started coaching when I was 15 years old. I worked for the city and Parks and Recreation Department, and our part of my job was I had to coach two baseball teams, a 5 and 6 year old team and a 7 and 8 year old team. And we didn't just like help out. We had to be like the head coach and communicate with the parents and develop practice schedules and plans, and give speeches and all of that, right? So I think that was sort of the foundation for me going into coaching at the high school level, and then transitioning as part of my business ownership journey into this, where this is, whether it's sports or business, it's a lot of it is so much the same. It's so relatable that, just love guiding and coaching people.
Yeah, I think that's really good. A really bad joke popped into my mind about how some franchise candidates could be just like 5 and 6 year olds, but it's the truth. They, sometimes you get those guys like, hey, I want to give you $1 million and I want this business to make 2 million. It's like, well, that's not how franchising works, but okay.
you gotta reel them in a little bit. They can be a little bit unrealistic at times.
Yeah. Yeah, they could be a little squirrely sometimes, but hey, it's all in, that's what we're here for, right? Education, providing them that knowledge that's really going to be able to identify, hey, this just like your mission over at Beacon is, I checked you guys out on LinkedIn, love the profile, checked out your business website, everything. It's looking, you guys have a great presence. And it's like, just like you guys are talking about, there's so many different franchise opportunities out there. What's your process? How do you actually go through this? Like, what can a candidate expect if they're sitting there thinking, yeah, I want to reach out to these guys, I kind of connect with them. What can they expect to go through that process with you?
Yeah. So, and I guess I assume that it's very similar in a lot of ways to other franchise brokers or consultants. But maybe not. I don't know, right? So, we're gonna have several calls trying to get to know each other before we even get to the point where I'm presenting any kind of franchise to them, right? I want to get to know them on a personal level, understand their background, their experiences, I do utilize, I'm assuming you're familiar with the Zoracle Spot On assessment. It's a great tool, and I have make sure that everybody completes that, because it really makes a big difference in the matchmaking process. After I do that, I also have a questionnaire that goes into some great detail about their likes or dislikes or interests. I'll take those two things along with all the notes I've compiled, and I'll take them and part of this has been automated, but then of course I put my personal touch on this as well. And we build a business model or profile for that person, right? Speaking to them, saying, hey, this is what you told me. This is the kind of salesperson you are, and et cetera, et cetera. Go over that and make sure, we're all on the same page before we move on to the franchise presentation. Once we're ready for that, then I'll go check territory availability, and then we'll meet and then we'll take them through that presentation. And that's really, honestly, that's really the beginning, right? That's the fun part, looking at them and getting them excited. But once we are able to introduce them to people like you, that's really when it is just getting started,
Yeah.
I don't know how other brokers do it, but we like to stay engaged, very engaged with the candidate throughout the entire process. Sometimes we're on calls with them, sometimes we're not. But even if we're not, we're meeting with them at least weekly, sometimes more than that if they would like to. And we're doing a lot of things along the way, looking at making sure this is making sense with the demographics of their area, connecting them with funding partners, attorneys, CPAs, and things like that. So it's quite the process. It's a lot of fun. Most people, almost everybody that goes through it, even if they don't buy a franchise, I think they come away from it, glad that they went through the process.
Yeah. I can say that, I appreciate the due diligence that you're doing on your end to make sure that, they're a good fit, right? And at the end of the day, because, ultimately you could just get on that first call. Hey, how much money you got? All right, give me about 20 minutes. Let me go through some brands here, right? That opportunity is there, right? You could do that. But you're putting in the work and it's showing, right? You're creating success. You're already seeing that success built in the back end. So I think that's really important. And, your candidates are going to be doing, as much as you work for your candidates, I have a true belief that as hard as the consultant works for their candidates, the candidate will work just as hard when they're with that brand to do that due diligence. I think that's something that's not talked about enough in the franchise industry, is like how important it is to do due diligence and really actively engage in that market and see where the opportunity is. And, the more that you can show them, hey, I'm going to be here for you. I'm working this just like you are. I'm here for you. I think that that's a really important thing.
100%. I mean, if they see us doing that due diligence for them for a while, and then they'll mimic that, they'll mirror that and do it themselves. And also, it's a lot of it is setting expectations, right? What's about to happen once you start talking to this franchise? What's that process look like? Make sure they're serious about this. This is a huge decision, life decision, could change their life. So we don't take that lightly. We want to make sure that, they're definitely motivated to go through the process and they know what's coming, set the expectation.
And one thing that Brennan mentioned that it's a good point, talking about being engaged, right? So we believe, as Brennan said, that we keep our clients engaged with us, and weekly, maybe sometimes even twice a week communication. We set that expectation on the front end. Hey, let's go ahead and schedule our next call, even if this is just a check-in call. At the same time, we really try, like on your end, we really try to make that happen between us two as well, Dylan, because the more engaged we are with all three of us, you, the client, and us, the better off that relationship's going to be, and the better we're going to chance of us getting that finish line. We've had some in the past that, communication was a struggle, right? And, sometimes things fall through the cracks like that. So,
and look, I just to echo what Shawn said, that's a great point, communication between the broker and the ZOR is so important. And look, just to commend Dylan. Dylan is awesome at that, right? I mean, he is on top of it, updates, the chatting back and forth. And look, I hate to say it, but there are Zors out there that's not the case. It's like pulling teeth to find out, hey, how do you think this call went? Give me some insight there. So I definitely look at it as it's a team thing. And I appreciate you, Dylan, for that.
Cheers to Dylan.
Nah,
How about
yeah.
Dylan?
There we go. Nah, hey, I appreciate you throwing that love my way. I try. Sometimes I think I give too much information. I'll be like, he picked his nose twice during the call. No, I'm just kidding. I don't say that deep, but but no, you're absolutely right, dude. I can't express enough my frustration as a franchisor when I'm working with, especially with someone who is coming from a consultant, right? A lead that's coming from a consultant, a candidate who is engaged with somebody outside my process specifically. It's very frustrating on our end where it's like, man, I've sent 7 call logs and I haven't even got a simple, hey, sounds good, I'm talking to him on Tuesday. It's like, wow, that's frustrating because you feel like you're alone in that process. And I expect to feel alone if I go out and I find that person, right? But I'm not alone, right? I have Josh to talk about things with, clue in other people, because when it's just you and the person and they've got all this fear and they're not telling anybody else about it, I might take in and say, hey, yeah, those fears, like, yeah, we overcame those. But then they could go to you and say, oh my gosh, I am so not overcome with that. And then we can all talk, right? And that's the beauty about this, like, triangle of love is what I like to call it, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm always very open with my candidates as well as my consultants. It's like, hey, we're going to talk about you and this relationship outside of just you knowing and being on that call. Like, we're going to talk about, your fears as well as your, like, what's holding you back from taking that next step. And you got to expect that. And you got to understand that those are going to be conversations that are going to be had. But I want you to have those conversations with the consultant as well. I want you to talk about if it's not right for you, I want you to tell them that, so that we're not, I don't want to waste anybody's time. I always tell people, you're not wasting my time. I literally get paid to sit here and talk to you. So, like, I'm happy to do it all day. But I don't know if you can relate to any of that, but yeah, it can be very frustrating for sure whenever you don't get that communication.
Yeah, and you said it. Look, this business. It can feel very lonely as it is, right? And so, well, look, when we have an opportunity to interact, and why not take advantage of that and help each other out and not feel so lonely?
I couldn't agree more. Hey, I want to ask you this. So it sounds like you're actively engaging and helping people out. You probably got some success stories. I'd love to hear the one that comes to mind. If you're on stage, and someone says, hey, Brenan or Shawn, I want to know, who do you think of when you think of the person that you've helped the most or you think has come the farthest? Who's that success story for you?
Well, I'll say, so this has been several years ago. Had a lady, and she was in Texas, and she had, very strong societal and achiever traits, right? So, strong desire to impact the community, while at the same time being very driven, very goal oriented. But the problem was, she did not come to me at first. It was her husband, right? And so for the first several calls, it was just me and the husband. And then it took me a while, but I finally realized, wait a minute, she's going to have a bigger role in this than he led me to believe, right? And so I was like, all right, we've got to get her involved here, right? So the further down the process we went, the more it was her and not so much him, right? And so, based on the fact that she really did want to make a difference in the community, but she was also very goal-oriented and just a high achiever. There was a particular franchise that I liked for her, and she was somebody that could handle an emerging brand. That's not for everybody, right? But it was for her. And And so, that was the one that I really felt strong. I presented several brands, but that's the one that I really tried to push her towards because I felt like it was just a great fit. They were an emerging brand, but they had a great setup to really help people in the community as part of what they're doing. A great cause, right? And so, ultimately she ended up signing with those guys. Well, they signed, but she was the one. She was the lead from that point forward. She was running the day to day. It was her business, right?
Yeah.
And within no time, she was actually named an IFA franchisee of the year, and that's a huge accomplishment. So, she went from, not really being a part of the process to being one of the top franchisees, regardless of industry in the country.
Yeah. Yeah. How about you, Shawn?
Man, I'll probably have to relate more to another business, but
That's fine. Let's do it. This is all about business expense. Yeah, man. That's all this is about.
Just helping our client in the insurance space a year ago was amazing, right? Because we were just kind of testing our platform out, and we really wanted it to put it in place for the franchise broker. We said, wait a minute, we got to try it in a space we really know pretty well first. So we did, and we took a company that was kind of just scraping by each year to tripling their sales in 1 year. Quadruple, my bad. 1 year. And it was like, this is great. This is a great testimony. It's a great feeling to be able to help somebody kind of dig themselves out of the trenches and put them back on the map and just keep going, and that's been, when we look back on that, we're like, yeah, that's really exciting. And we want to bring that to other people,
Absolutely. Well, hey, Brenan and Shawn, thank you so much for sharing those stories. I think that's what helps the listeners relate to, is this something I'm going through? And do I feel like I'm down in the dumps? Do I feel like maybe I do need to bring my partner involved in this? And actually, I'm sure Brenan, going through that process, it probably wasn't the easiest to identify that sometimes, because you're like, you always ask that question. I think it's almost like a sales question where it's like, is there anybody else that that we should be talking to consider this? And it's like, no, I'll be taking the reins. But then you go like 4 calls later, and it's like, well, really, it's going to be my wife that's running the day to day. And it's like, man, I don't want you. So I actually I have like a kind of a little story about this too. It's kind of funny. So we have a franchisee that we were working with, and great guy, love him. He's going to be super successful in what he does. But it was funny because I was like, man, you don't have to do my job. Like, you got enough going on in your life. Let me do my job, because now you're having to be, a husband, a father, a director of, what he was doing. And he's also having to be a brand developer in the back end, because his wife wasn't a part of that process. And I'm like, man, let me do my job. I know how to speak this lingo. I know how to talk about it. So I think it's cool that you were able to pull that out, Brenan, because, for me, I've experienced that too. And so just for all those listening out there, listen, bring your partner in, because there's no one that you're going to speak to in the franchise industry that's going to say, I only want one person on this call. The more ears that we can affect and the more people that we can talk to, the better, because everybody has a different outlook on something. Everybody has a different perspective, and we could talk about those things and really relate it to how it's going to work out.
Yeah, that's a good point. So our end goal is to get you, the franchise owner, to a place where you're profitable, you own a great business, and you're having a lot of success. And that's what we're excited about, having the opportunity to do, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think one of the things that always comes back to me is like franchising, the systems there, right? It's already been proven. You can see the model, the finances, but at the end of the day, it's like, how hard do you want to work? If you want to work hard, you can make a lot of money doing, because this is the path towards that. But if you just expect to put your money in, sit back, and hey, everybody wants to sip mojitos on a Mexican beach and rake it in, but you got to get to that point. It's not like you invest day one. This isn't like GameStop back in 2020 or whatever. You don't invest in day one and then all of a sudden it grows, man. You got to put in that work. It really is. It is hard work, but I absolutely think you're right, Shawn, in that, hey, if you put it in, it can be very, very rewarding at the end of the day. And yeah.
Right.
By the way, that was a great movie about the GameStop. And did you watch the movie? I think it's on Netflix.
I haven't watched it yet, but I'm going to.
Incredible.
Yeah, I'm definitely. It's called like Stupid Dumb Money. Was it Dumb Money or something like? Yeah, that looks good. No, little shout out to Dumb Money there in case you're listening. Throw us some of that GameStop. How you doing? But no, that's awesome. Well, hey, I love talking about success, but something else I love talking about on this podcast is failure. Right? Tell me, and it doesn't have to be on the franchise side. Tell me about a time where you've had to overcome a failure in your life so that, the listeners know out there, hey, this ain't a perfect world. Sometimes mistakes happen. How do we overcome those things, right? Because at the end of the day, you got up because you're sitting here right now. So that means you got up and you overcame that. How did you stop that fear from letting you, go forward?
Well, I think it comes down to, having that grit, and everybody has it, right? It's just, it takes some people to help get other people to bring it out in them, right? So that's where coaches come into play, franchise consultants, those that like to help people. But at the end of the day, I've been in places, I've been, stuck in a job I didn't like. Maybe even when I first started in sales, I was wondering if this was for me, if I was in the wrong place. And I can remember my first year in insurance, actually my first 6 months in insurance, true story. First 6 months in insurance. Now I came from an administrative position in education, making decent money, right? Well, 6 months in insurance, it's Christmas. I got a 2-year-old at home, and I got a check sitting in the bank for $600 and something for my commission check that month. And I'm like, I can't tell my wife this. There's got to be wrong. I can't tell my wife. So, a lot of that process I went through, it just had me in a place where I don't know what to do. I got to do something. I don't know what to tell my wife. I don't know what I'm going to do. Right. So, at that point, I just had to really dig in and just push myself to, like you said a minute ago, you just got to, it's not just about working hard. It's about finding the right tools, the right people to surround yourself with, the right mentors. All those things combined can help you. And, at the end of the day, if you have a little grit and a little want to and a little work ethic, you could do anything, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that a lot. I appreciate you sharing that personal story. That's really awesome. How about you over there, brother?
Yeah, so I don't know if this fits the question, but it definitely fits grit and want to, and it's nothing to do with franchising. But I think back to the time when I was in 2005, I was a head football coach at a high school when Hurricane Katrina came through our town, right? And I don't know if you know much about Hurricane Katrina. You're sort of young, you may not remember, but
I remember it.
it was devastating, right? And it pretty much came right down Main Street where we're in our town. And we had just played our first football game. We won that football game. Everybody was happy. And then the next day, the hurricane came, or actually 2 days later, and most of the houses were destroyed. The school was destroyed. We didn't go back to school for a couple of months, right? And we just played one football game, and everybody was scattered all over the South, all over the country. And I started receiving text messages from players, and they said, "Hey, coach, we want to play football." And I was like, "Well, I don't know how that's going to happen, but we'll try to figure it out." So we decided to have a meeting at the stadium. And after about a week, we met there, and we had 92 on the roster before in the first game, and I had 17 show up for that meeting. And it was most of the kids, they would spend all day having to to work on their homes that were no longer there, or gut the homes that were there but were ruined by the floodwaters. And then they would come to practice. And, you know, the first game back, you know, we had to use uniforms that were donated from some team in North Carolina, which was, but we played a team. We showed up, I think at that point, we had found a few more players. We had like 22 kids, maybe. And the other team showed up with 2 busloads. And so like, this is fun. But we had a really good group of 4, and we had like a 7th grader starting in this game, but they were gritty, right? And they actually won the game. We won the next several games, and we actually made the playoff, which is incredible. I mean, it's not to happen. And that was something that sort of brought the whole community together, because there was nothing else to do. You know, I mean, everything was closed. I know it's hard to imagine, but it was like a ghost town, you know. And so, you know, that's just I guess a story of, you know, people being down and out. I mean, we had kids on our team that I had a kid on the team that his grandma died during a hurricane. They would go to each other's house and help clean up. They were sleeping in tents in their yards, but they wanted to play ball, and because that's sort of what brought them together. That was their family at that point, right? So that's just a story of grit, determination, and fighting through some tough times. And, you know, I think back when I go through tough times, you know, those kids, you know, that's just something I turn to and say, you know what, I'm going to keep on going. You know, I mean, that was about as tough as it could get. And so those guys really taught me something during that time.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you sharing that. You know, I think at the end of the day, it all does come back. I think it really does. I know, you know, because at the end of the day, like, there was a huge fear of the unknown. And that comes up a lot in franchising, because 90% of the time, if you have a franchise candidate who's looking at a brand, they have no experience in that industry, right? So the way that it really honestly truly does relate to this is, like, I can only imagine that y'all had no idea what was going to happen, right? You were like, hey, we don't know, but what we do know right here and right now is we could play football, and we can get out here, we can train, we can make it happen. And rather than letting that fear of, I'm going to let that cripple me, right? Rather than letting that cripple you, you're getting out there, you're getting after it, you're using that grit and determination to make what you know you can affect in that moment happen. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it was truly amazing. It was. And you can actually find the radio show This American Life on NPR. You can go search for it. You can listen to a little story about it.
Okay, yeah. So listen, if you're listening out there, go do it right now. Wait till you get to the end of this episode, then you pause and go check that one out, though. But hey, I kind of teased it a little bit. I want to talk about, you know, a hot topic in franchising, and I'm sure you're going to be like, oh, of course we're going to talk about this, but it's important to talk about. I always love doing it. Common misconceptions, right? You know, people think of the franchise industry. What do you think are those top common misconceptions? And, you know, maybe something that is a little bit different that you might want to incite those listeners about the franchise industry outside of what those perceptions might be.
I mean, I would say the number one thing that I probably hear is that, you know, I don't want to buy a job, right? Yeah, I hear that a lot. I feel like I'm buying a job if I go that route. And, you know, that's simply not the case with most good franchises, right? I mean, the Zors, they usually, you know, want you to be the one. They don't want you to be the one that's out in the field as the technician, so to speak, right? I mean, you're the CEO of your business. You're working on the business, not in the business. And so I think it's important that we make sure, and that's another reason why you don't necessarily, 90% of the time, you don't have to have experience in that industry, right? The franchises, the good franchises are going to train you really good on the front end. They're going to be there to support you in all aspects of the business. And again, you're the business owner. You know, you're not the guy that's going out and cutting down a tree.
If you want to go cut down a tree, by the way, if you want to be a Joshua Tree person, you want to cut down a tree, go get a job. That's what we tell you.
Exactly.
No, I think that's a great point. I've actually not had that one on here, so I appreciate you bringing that up. How about you? I know, Shawn, I know you're just getting into everything, but coming into this, just being from the industry world, especially, you probably have those are probably fresh in your mind too about, those common misconceptions. What do you think out there is there that we missed out there?
Well, coming from that, and also the people I have talked to, a lot of the first initial conversations are, well, what kind of restaurant franchises do you have? Because most people are thinking franchise, oh, I want to own a Chick-fil-A, I want to own a McDonald's, a Subway, whatever. Right? And that's, to me, there are much better opportunities out there than those. Now, those are great, and it's got to fit the right person, right? But it's also big initial investments too, and there's long waits, and actually, I don't think you actually own the Chick-fil-A, but I don't know that for sure, so don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's a common misconception to me is restaurant ownership, restaurant franchising.
hmm
From being in it for a little while, what I've seen, there's so many more profitable franchises that you can actually work on the business and not in the business, not cut the tree down, but actually delegate and run your business, right? So,
Yeah. And what's funny is Chick-fil-A. So it's like, and not to put Chick-fil-A down in any way, because you have a better chance of getting into Harvard than being accepted into that franchise. So, but I just want to say, like, Chick-fil-A, I do believe you are buying a job. That is exactly what you're buying, because they want you to work in this every single day. They
right.
don't actually allow you to have separate opportunities that are out there. In our franchise concept, as well as I know a lot of others, we want you to not only get into this, but get into other stuff, because we want to make you so successful in this one that you have the opportunity to go into those other ones that are not competing services, but complementary services. Because if you're letting money sit there and there's a franchise system for it, go pick it up, right? Share that marketing universe of clients, because that's only going to benefit your clients and your bottom line at the end of the day, like we said at the beginning of this call. So I appreciate that. I think that's a really, really good point. Couple more things I definitely want to get into. If somebody is considering entering the franchise industry for the first time, is there any advice that you would give to that person who might be listening?
Okay, so if you're listening and you are wanting to get in the franchise space, this is what you need to do. Get out a sheet of paper. 228-216-0903.
Right.
That's it.
That's it.
We got you. But seriously.
Guiding light.
Beacon Franchise Broker. But seriously though, I really do believe that you should seek the help of a good consultant, a good broker. And I guarantee you that if you do that, your eyes are going to be open to some things that you probably never even thought of, and that you're going to be intrigued by and want to look into. There's so many franchises at our disposal that we have agreements with, are able to present, that there's going to be some things there that we're able to show you, and that you're going to get excited about, and we're going to be able to help you with every aspect of the process as you go through, from the very beginning all the way to signing an agreement and even beyond.
No, I couldn't express how good that advice is more, because honest to God, everybody who's listening to this, you're probably an expert in your field in some aspect, and that's exactly what y'all are. Shawn, Brendan, y'all are literally experts at looking at a person and saying, hey, this is what I believe the franchise, that system that you're looking for, would be best. They don't have to come in and be like, man, I got to wait 8 years to be a Chick-fil-A franchisee. No, listen, I can get you paired with a brand that actually meets what you want to do in the next 6 months. Like that's a realistic goal. And I think that's a really good key piece there. How about you, Shawn? Any thoughts on that one?
Echo what Brendan said, right? If you're just getting into the franchise space or thinking about it, the best thing to do is take out that piece of paper, write Brendan's number down and give him a call. But seriously, you need to do that. But on a second serious note, find a really good franchise consultant, because that's the key, right? A consultant that is going to go to work for you, like we've already discussed, that's going to fact find for you, that's going to research, that's going to do the due diligence to make sure they match you with a not only a profitable franchise, but one that matches what you're looking for, your likes and dislikes and your personality, your goals, those kinds of things. Because that's what matters. At the end of the day, we don't want to place somebody in a franchise that 3 years from now they're unhappy in, right? Or they're not making any money and they're not living the dream they want to live. At the end of the day, we want to make sure we're matching people with franchises that they're happy with, that they can be successful in, and make a good living for their family. So if you are considering franchises, doing some research, whatever that case may be, first goal is to make sure to find a good consultant. And Beacon Franchise Brokers is your guiding light.
I like that. I like that. I love the little tech. I gotta say, I think that you made a really, really good point there, because it really is something where it's like, yo, don't go out there and do all this research yourself. It's like my dog, sorry about that. But it's like, allow us to actually do what we do best and let me help you go through this journey so you don't feel alone, right? So guys, before we get off here, I know you already did a little touch bit on this, but if somebody is out there right now, they're listening and they're thinking, hey, I want to navigate through this vast sea of different franchise options. What is the best way to get in touch with Beacon Franchise Beacon Franchise Brokers? What would be the best way to get in contact with y'all?
I'll let Brendan go.
So there's a number of ways you can get in touch with us. I gave you the phone number, right? You can also shoot us an email, Brenan, that's with one N, Brenan at beaconfranchisebrokers.com, Shawn with a W at beaconfranchisebrokers.com. Go to our website, beaconfranchisebrokers.com. And any other way, Shawn?
No, that's it. I mean, 3 ways to communicate with us. You got a piece of paper you wrote our number down on. So.
Or you can find me on LinkedIn as well. If you want to hit me up there, that's fine too.
Excellent. And I will put all of that contact information down in the episode description. So make sure to check that out. Click those links. Go check out these guys' pages. These guys are some seriously awesome folks. I tell you what, we had a nice cigar, nice sit down, just had a great conversation when we met back in at the FBA conference. And I'm excited that, you reached out wanting to be a part of this franchise happy hour, because it really, truly is a pleasure to speak with franchise consultants who are trying to make a positive impact, and not only their communities, just like you guys are, but also in this industry, because like I said, the more people who are interested in promoting a positive growth in this industry, the better everybody's elevated, right? So I'm super excited to have the opportunity to have you guys on. I do want to ask you before we get off here, and I'll let you guys go have some drinks yourself that are not Celsius, but maybe something else. If you each were an adult beverage, what would you be?
I'm going to be a Corona Light with a lime. A little salt on it.
I'm probably going to be some type of a bourbon, right? Probably a Buffalo Trace or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I might be drinking Brenan right here. I got a little Basil Hayden, if you ever heard of that. But no, I love it. Every time I think about this, I always want to go like the bourbon route, because I love bourbon. But then I think about it and I'm just like, nah, man, I'm a cold beer, right? Like, that's just who I am. I can't get away from it. So I relate. Shawn, nice Corona with a lime, bourbon. You know what? I'm just anything that's going to make you happy and make you excited, get you all fired up. But hey, gents, thanks again. I appreciate it so much. I appreciate you being on the happy hour. There's always one thing I like to do at the end of this is do a little cheers. So, hey, here's cheers to you, brothers. Cheers to me. And here's to franchise success.
Appreciate it, Dylan.
Thank you, Dylan. Appreciate you, brother.